Alara pressed her fingertips against the cool glass of the observation deck. Outside, the stars were cold and distant, just like always. But today, the silence of space felt different. It felt heavy, like a giant was holding its breath. She worked as a communications technician on Gateway Prime, a sprawling deep space station that was humanity's furthest outpost in this sector. Usually, her job involved listening to the chatter of ships and the hum of the station. Today, all she felt was a growing quiet. The Zethari were coming. They were a new enemy, silent and strange. They didn't broadcast threats or make demands. Their ships, like dark insects, just appeared, moving with perfect, creepy coordination. They fought without passion, it seemed, just cold, deadly skill. And they were winning. One by one, human colonies and stations had gone dark. Now, Gateway Prime was next on their list. Alara had always been a bit different. She felt things deeply. If a friend was sad, Alara felt a shadow of that sadness too. If someone was joyful, a spark of it would light her up. Her mother used to say she had a big heart. Sometimes that big heart felt like a burden. Right now, it felt like a drum beating with the fear of everyone on the station. But this was more than just shared fear. For days, as the Zethari fleet got closer, Alara had felt a strange pressure building in her mind. It was like a cold, invisible hand pressing down, a feeling of a single, enormous, alien will. It made her head ache and her thoughts feel slow. Others on the station were tense, jumpy. They checked news reports, their faces grim. Alara felt their anxiety, but underneath it, she felt the Zethari, this vast, unblinking attention focused on Gateway Prime. Suddenly, red lights flashed throughout the corridor. A siren blared, its harsh sound cutting through the oppressive quiet. Zethari attack. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. A voice boomed over the station's speakers. Panic erupted. People ran, their shouts echoing. Alara felt a wave of their terror wash over her, so strong it made her knees weak. Her section was close to an outer docking ring, a likely place for the Zethari to try and board. She needed to get to her assigned emergency post. She was halfway down the corridor when an explosion rocked the station. The lights went out, then flickered back on, dim and orange. Ahead, a section of the wall was gone, replaced by a jagged hole leading to the black of space. And through that hole, silent and quick, came the Zethari. They were tall and thin, encased in dark, segmented armor. No faces were visible, just smooth, insect-like heads. They moved with an eerie, synchronized grace, their weapons already firing precise blasts of energy. Her friend, Ben, a cheerful engineer who always had a joke ready, was just ahead of her. He raised his sidearm, a small pulse pistol. Before he could fire, a Zethari drone swiveled, its weapon flashing. Ben cried out, a short, sharp sound, and fell. A wave of pure, agonizing grief hit Alara. It was so intense, so sharp, it felt like a physical blow. Hot tears streamed down her face. Beneath the grief, a furious rage boiled up. How dare they? How dare they come here and hurt her friends, destroy her home? Two Zethari drones turned towards her, their movements identical, their weapons lifting. Alara squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the end. In that instant, her grief and rage peaked, a silent scream in her soul. And then, something odd happened. The cold, heavy pressure she'd been feeling from the Zethari, the one that felt like a single mind, suddenly twisted. It felt like a rope pulled too tight had snapped. The two Zethari drones in front of her faltered. Their perfectly synchronized movements broke. One stumbled to the side, its weapon arm wavering. The other tilted its head as if confused. Before Alara could understand what happened, station security officers rounded the corner, their heavier weapons roaring. The two disoriented Zethari drones were cut down in a hail of fire. A security officer helped Alara to her feet. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Alara nodded, still shaking, her mind reeling. The Zethari had hesitated. Why? She pushed the thought away. It had to be shock, her mind playing tricks on her. It just had to be. Gateway Prime held, but barely. The Zethari attack was brutal and precise, but human defenders, fighting for their lives, managed to push them back from the main sections of the station. The cost was terrible. Elara, along with other civilian survivors, many still dazed and grieving, was quickly evacuated. They were herded onto cramped transport ships, leaving behind the scarred station and too many fallen friends. Their destination was a rear-echelon military base, a fortified moon called Bastion Point. It was a place of grim efficiency, filled with soldiers and worried-looking officials. Elara felt lost and small in the bustling, impersonal corridors. The memory of Ben falling, the feeling of the Zethari pressure briefly distorting, it all played over and over in her mind. She told herself the Zethari stumbling was a fluke, a lucky break. But a tiny, persistent part of her wondered. Days turned into weeks on Bastion Point. Elara was assigned light duties, helping to sort through salvaged communication logs. It was tedious work, but it kept her hands busy. In the common rooms, news reports about the Zethari war played constantly. She'd watch the footage of Zethari drones moving with their usual chilling coordination, and the old fear would rise. But sometimes, when a particularly vivid image of destruction was shown, and Alara felt a strong surge of anger or sorrow, she'd notice it. A tiny flicker in the news screen, a split-second burst of static in the audio, almost too quick to see or hear. No one else seemed to notice. She started paying closer attention. When a recording of a captured Zethari drone's internal feed was analyzed during a briefing she attended, she focused on the cold, alien perspective. A wave of revulsion and defiance washed through her. At that exact moment, the projected image shimmered, and a faint, high-pitched whine cut through the presenter's voice for just a second. The presenter paused, tapped the equipment, and continued, blaming a power surge. Alara's heart beat faster. Could it be? Could her strong feelings be affecting their technology, or even them? It sounded crazy. She needed to know more. She remembered hearing that Bastion Point had a small xenolinguistics lab where they studied alien languages and technology. She knew they had a few inert Zethari artifacts recovered from battlefields. One was supposedly a communication node, a device the Zethari used to link their hive mind. Summoning her courage, Alara requested access to the lab. She told the stern-faced administrator that, as a communications technician, she was interested in studying the Zethari, linguistic patterns, and signal structures. It wasn't entirely a lie. After some paperwork and a suspicious glance, she was granted limited access to a quiet room where several pieces of alien tech sat on sterile tables. In the center was the Zethari node. It was a smooth, black ovoid, about the size of a human head, with faint, unlit seams across its surface. It felt cold and lifeless to the touch. She sat before it, taking a deep breath. If this was real, she needed a strong, pure emotion, not fear, not anger, something else. She closed her eyes and thought of home, of the solstice festival on her colony world, long before the war. She remembered the music, the bright lanterns, the smell of roasted kava nuts, the feeling of community, of pure, uncomplicated joy. She let the warmth of that memory fill her, pushing out the grey realities of Bastion Point. She focused all that defiant joy, that love for a time of peace, towards the silent black egg on the table. For a long moment, nothing. Then the node vibrated faintly. The unlit seams glowed with a soft, blue light. A series of high-pitched, chaotic tones, like a broken musical instrument, chirped from within it. The status lights on the table beneath it, previously dark, flashed red and amber in a wild, erratic pattern. Fascinating. Elara jumped, her eyes flying open. A man stood in the doorway, tall and lean, with kind eyes and a thoughtful expression. He wore a lab coat. Dr. Aris Thorne, he introduced himself, his gaze fixed on the still-flashing Zethari node. I don't believe I've ever seen it do that. Dr. Aris Thorne was not like the other grim-faced military personnel on Bastion Point. He had an air of quiet curiosity, and his eyes held a spark of genuine interest as he listened to Alara's hesitant explanation of what she had experienced. He didn't dismiss her out of hand. Instead, he asked questions, his brow furrowed in thought. He'd seen the node's reaction, and he knew it wasn't normal. After their first meeting, Dr. Thorne did some digging. He read the incident reports from Gateway Prime, noting the unusual behavior of the Zethari drones just before Alara was rescued. He cross-referenced it with the brief energy spike recorded near her when the Zethari node in his lab had activated. It was a long shot, a wild theory, but the war was going badly. Humanity needed long shots. A few days later, Alara was discreetly summoned to a different part of Bastion Point, a section marked with stark warnings. Sector 7, authorized personnel only. Inside, the atmosphere was even more serious. Dr. Thorne was there, along with a stern-looking woman in a high-ranking military uniform, Commander Valerius. Miss Alara, Commander Valerius began, her voice devoid of warmth. Dr. Thorne has presented us with a unique hypothesis regarding your sensitivities. Cautious testing began. It was strange and uncomfortable. They'd show Alara images, sometimes of Zethari atrocities, designed to provoke anger or sorrow, sometimes of peaceful human scenes meant to evoke joy or hope. All the while, sensitive instruments monitored a nearby active, but heavily shielded, Zethari drone, captured in a recent skirmish. The results were undeniable. When Alara experienced a powerful, focused emotion, the Zethari drone would twitch. Its movements would become jerky, uncoordinated. The stronger and more complex Alara's emotion, the more pronounced the effect. It wasn't traditional mind reading. As Dr. Thorne explained, it was more like her individual human emotions were creating a powerful noise that interfered with the Zethari hive mind's shared consciousness, their way of thinking and acting as one. Her brain was, in effect, a jamming signal. But it took a toll. Projecting such strong emotions on demand was exhausting. It left Alara feeling drained, raw, and shaky. Sometimes, after a particularly intense session, she would just weep, not from sadness, but from sheer emotional overload. Dr. Thorne was always there with a comforting word or a quiet presence, understanding the strain. They also discovered that a mix of emotions, like the fierce, protective love she felt for humanity, combined with a bitter, burning anger at their losses, seemed to be even more disruptive to the Zethari than a single, simple feeling. Sector 7 engineers, working with Dr. Thorne, began to develop a device they called an emotional amplifier. It looked like a metallic collar with delicate sensors that pressed against Alara's temples and the base of her skull. It didn't create emotions, but it was designed to focus her natural psychic output, making it more directional and potent. The first field test was terrifying. A small Zethari mining operation had been detected on a barren, lifeless moon nearby. From a cloaked human scout ship, hidden in the moon's shadow, Alara, wearing the amplifier, was asked to try and disrupt them. Commander Valerius watched via a live drone feed, her expression unreadable. Alara focused. She pictured the Zethari drones as mindless insects, stripping away resources. She channeled a feeling of intense territoriality, a primal, possessive anger, like an animal defending its nest. She added to it a layer of pure, disorienting confusion. Through the drone feed they watched. The Zethari mining drones on the moon's surface, previously working in perfect unison, began to falter. One stopped, its cutting laser still aimed at a rock, doing nothing. Another started moving erratically, bumping into a third. Then, incredibly, one drone turned and fired its laser at a piece of Zethari mining equipment, a shower of sparks erupting. After a few minutes of this chaos, the Zethari drones abruptly ceased all activity and in a disorganized scramble retreated back to their ship, which then lifted off and vanished into space. On the scout ship, a cheer went up from the small crew. Commander Valerius allowed herself a small, tight smile. Ilara sagged in her chair, feeling like she'd run a marathon. It was a tiny victory on a forgotten moon, but it was proof. Her strange, burdensome empathy could be a weapon. The small success at the Zethari mining outpost bought humanity a little hope, but not much time. Weeks later, the Zethari, as if angered by the disruption, launched a new, massive offensive. Their target, the Olympus shipyards. Olympus wasn't just a station. It was a sprawling complex of dry docks, factories, and research labs, orbiting a gas giant. It was where humanity built and repaired its warships. If Olympus fell, the human fleet would wither and die, and the war would be lost. Fleet Command's projections were grim. The Zethari armada heading for Olympus was huge, far outnumbering the human ships that could be scrambled to defend it. Conventional tactics predicted a swift, brutal defeat for humanity. Panic began to ripple through the outer colonies. In the desperate halls of Sector 7, Commander Valerius made a decision. Project Cassandra, Alara, was humanity's last, improbable chance. Alara, Dr. Thorne, and a team of technicians with the now heavily upgraded emotional amplifier were assigned to the HSF Indomitable, the flagship of the hastily assembled defense fleet racing to meet the Zethari. The pressure on Alara was immense, a crushing weight on her spirit. She was no soldier, no hero. She was a communications tech who felt things too deeply. Now, the fate of worlds, the survival of her species, might rest on her ability to feel and to project those feelings with enough force to break an alien hive mind. The journey to Olympus was a blur of preparation and anxiety. Dr. Thorne worked with her constantly, helping her practice focusing her emotions, guiding her through meditation techniques to conserve her mental energy. But he also encouraged her to feel. "Don't bottle it up, Alara," he'd said gently. "You'll need all of it. Every joy, every sorrow, every fear, every hope, they are your ammunition." So she let herself remember. She thought of Ben's sudden, shocking death on Gateway Prime and the cold grief that still ached. She recalled stories of Zethari cruelty and felt a hot, righteous anger. She pictured children laughing on planets now silenced by the Zethari, and a fierce, protective love swelled in her chest. She looked at the faces of the young, determined crew members of the Indomitable and felt a desperate, stubborn hope for their future. All these emotions, she gathered them, nurtured them, knowing she would soon have to unleash them like a storm. As the Indomitable and its battle group neared the Olympus system, the psychic pressure from the approaching Zethari main fleet became a palpable force. It was far stronger than anything Alara had felt before, a terrifying, almost solid wave of cold, unified, alien intent pressing down on her mind, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. It whispered of defeat, of the futility of resistance. She was escorted to the resonance chamber, a small, heavily shielded room deep within the Indomitable. The upgraded amplifier, now a complex framework of gleaming metal and softly glowing crystals, was built into the chair at the chamber's center. It hummed with latent power. Elara took her place, the technicians making final adjustments, their faces tight with worry. Dr. Thorne gave her a reassuring nod, though his own eyes were shadowed with concern. Through a small viewport, Elara could see the main tactical display. Red icons representing Zethari ships swarmed towards the blue icons of the human fleet. The first shots were being fired. The Indomitable shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. The battle for Olympus had begun. The weight of worlds settled onto Elara's shoulders. The main Zethari fleet crashed into the human defenders like a tidal wave of dark metal and silent fury. On the Indomitable's tactical display, blue icons representing human ships flickered and died with alarming speed. The Zethari's perfect coordination was a terrible thing to behold. They moved as one, their fire precise, their tactics flawless, dismantling the human fleet piece by piece. The Indomitable itself bucked and groaned under a relentless barrage. Alarms blared. Sparks showered from a damaged console on the bridge, visible through Alara's viewport into the resonance chamber. The psychic pressure from the Zethari was a crushing agony now, a vast, cold chorus screaming of human annihilation. Fear, raw and primal, tried to claw its way into Alara's heart, threatening to overwhelm her. Dr. Thorne's voice, calm despite the chaos, came over her comlink. "Elara, now, we need you now." She closed her eyes. This was it. All the practice, all the pain, all the hope and fear, it all came down to this moment. She took a ragged breath, and then, with a silent scream of her soul, she unleashed everything. It wasn't a single emotion. It was a symphony, a tidal wave, a hurricane of pure, undiluted humanity. The searing grief for every life lost, for Ben, for the silenced worlds, for the future that might never be. The unyielding, defiant rage of a species pushed to the brink, refusing to break, refusing to die quietly. The fierce, protective love she felt for the young faces on this ship, for the memory of children's laughter, for the idea of home. The desperate, stubborn, almost illogical hope for a dawn she might not see. The nostalgic joy of small, forgotten pleasures, a warm drink on a cold day, the comfort of a friend's hand, the beauty of a sunset on a peaceful world. The chilling fear of extinction, not as a passive victim, but as a fighter staring into the abyss. All of it, every contradictory, messy, glorious, terrible feeling that made her human, she hurled it outwards, amplified and focused by the humming machine around her. It was an anthem of man, raw and unfiltered, broadcast into the cold, unified mind of the Zethari. The effect was instantaneous and utterly catastrophic. On the tactical display, the perfectly ordered lines of Zethari ships shattered. Red icons suddenly veered off course, spinning wildly. Some ships simply stopped dead in space. Others began firing their weapons erratically, at empty space, at asteroids, even at each other. The devastatingly precise coordination that had been their greatest strength vanished as if it had never been. The oppressive psychic pressure Alara had been fighting against didn't just recoil, it fractured. It exploded into a million screaming shards. For the first time, Alara felt not a single, vast alien mind, but a cacophony of individual alien thoughts, terrified, confused, panicked. These were beings who had, perhaps, never known true individuality, never felt such a chaotic storm of emotion, and it was tearing them apart. On the bridge of the Indomitable, stunned silence reigned for a beat, then a disbelieving cheer erupted. Captain Eva Rostova, her face grim but now lit with a fierce light, barked orders. All ships press the attack. They're broken. Hit them now. The remaining human ships, battered but not beaten, surged forward, tearing into the disorganized Zethari. What was supposed to be a massacre had turned into a rout. In the resonance chamber, Alara slumped forward, the amplifier whining down. Blood trickled from her nose and ears. Every muscle in her body ached. Her mind felt scoured, empty, but through the viewport she saw it. The Zethari Armada, no longer a unified force but a panicked, fleeing mob, vanishing back into the dark. Dr. Thorne was by her side instantly, his face etched with concern and awe. "You did it, Alara," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You magnificent, brave girl, you did it." Humanity had won the battle for Olympus, not with bigger guns or faster ships, but with the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately overwhelming power of a single human heart, daring to feel it all.